Greetings, traveler. My name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for over 10 years now, and today I want to share with you what's the best way to avoid being review bombed at your game's launch. So, why does review bombing happen, and why do so many games seem to experience it, even though seemingly there is all this time to prepare for it and to make sure that people like the game as soon as it comes out? Well, let's take a look at what I call hard mode and why this cycle keeps happening. So typically, for many games out there, the development cycle begins by making the game, and many people continue making the game until they run out of time or out of money, which is usually synonymous, since you need to be able to support yourself to keep working on the game. And especially if you're an indie developer, as soon as you run out of money, you no longer have the luxury to be able to work exclusively on your game, and you have to find some sort of other work. So when this point comes, or soon before it, many developers feel the need to stop making the game and do something like a big release, tell as many people as possible about their game, and hopefully the sales from this will recoup all the time and money they used in step 2 to create the game, and will give them even more money for the future to continue with their development. So staying at step 3, what we see is that when you do your release, it seems obvious at this stage that you should make your release as large as possible. So that means telling as many people as possible, getting as many YouTubers or people to cover your game as possible, give it to lots of people to play. Hopefully they will love the game, they will tell everyone how great it is, and this will lead to lots of sales. However, moving to step 4, we see that since the decision to release the game came out of this very sudden and very rushed process of having to release the game due to lack of money, then marketing will only expose game flaws that are already in the game, instead of showing off how good the game is and all its good features. So essentially, when lots of people find out that this game is cool, but it has all these flaws, we get to step 5, where the game just gets review bombed. And instead of people discussing how good the game is and all its wonderful features, they only discuss the crashes that happen, the game balance issues, the game-breaking bugs, glitches that happen in the game, and so on. Nobody gets past those and actually into the fun part of the game to talk about that in the reviews instead. So this happens to many games, and it's easy to fall into this situation. Certainly where you're starting out, this might happen a lot, but thankfully there is an easy way of doing this, and this is what I want to introduce to you today. So what if we could go into this process and be sure that the people who will play the game and who will eventually review it will be guaranteed to like it? So let's have a look at this process. So we start similarly in this process at step 1 by developing our game. Then we, at some point when we feel that the game is playable but not necessarily in its complete state, we do a playtest. And during that playtest, we do the typical thing of asking people for their opinion, see what suggestions they have for the game, and so on. And if the game is in a state where it could be considered close to a complete product, we then ask our players, the people who came for the playtest, to buy the game. Now, I know what you're thinking here. You're thinking, oh my God, how could people pay for an incomplete game? How can you ask people to buy a game after a playtest? But this is actually the best time to ask for it. Why? Because the players who play the game already have a very good understanding, but they haven't been exposed yet to the complete game, which means that if they have enjoyed their time so far in the game, then there is a good chance that they will want to experience the rest of the game in the future. And what's the best way to experience the rest of the game? Well, to buy it and to have a good contact and a good communication with the game developers themselves to make sure that the things they care about in the game will be implemented for release at this point. So I will talk about this process in more depth in a moment, but let's see how this will play then out after this. So after you do the playtest and ask your players to actually buy the game, they will either buy it or not. Either way, it's completely fine at this point. If they choose to buy the game, then you can thank them and you can ask them what they liked about the game. If they choose not to buy the game, then this is an excellent opportunity to find out not just their general negative feedback about the game, so the things they didn't like, but also what specifically makes them not want to buy the game. And here the answer will surprise you most of the time, because someone might say, well, you know, your game could use better graphics or more weapons or better monsters or whatever. But after you ask them to buy the game and they might say no, then if you ask them why, they'll say, well, it's too expensive for me. And that's a different answer from I don't like the monsters. Or they might say, well, I don't play it on your platform. Or I don't like games that have controllers. Or I don't play strategy games if your game is a strategy game. So regardless of my opinion after this one playtest, this game is not for me, so I wouldn't buy it anyway. And little by little, you start understanding your target audience and the real reason people might not choose to buy your game. And talking about game feedback at this point can have all these different threads come out of it. So you can talk about graphics and game design and monsters and all that stuff. But when it comes to whether a player would buy the game or not, that, as you might find, is a completely different conversation and one that's very, very worth having at this point. So anyway, you continue to do this process. So develop the game a bit more, do more playtests, ask players to buy the game after the playtest, and you want to get to the point where 10 players in a row choose to buy the game. That's it. It's that simple. So if you get the game to a point, and again, it doesn't have to be 100% complete. If you get 10 players in a row to want to buy your game, that means that these 10 players and players in general consistently enjoy your game so much, and despite the fact that it's not 100% complete, maybe it's missing some character models or there's a couple of bugs here and there, but despite that, they want to experience the rest of the game, and that is why they choose to buy the game at this point. That is golden knowledge, because that means that when you move to step 4 and you get to the release of your game, two very important benefits happen. First, if you choose to do a big marketing campaign and choose to invite lots of famous YouTubers to play your game or do advertisement and so on, and the game gets a lot of exposure, then you know that at least for the most basic flaws and issues that the players would encounter in the game, those are already taken care of during the development cycle, and you knew about them because of the feedback people gave you during playtest. So when lots of people get to play the game, all these super basic flaws are already ironed out from the game, and people can just jump in and enjoy the fun part of your game. And the second good benefit to this is that even if you choose to not do a marketing campaign and not invite a bunch of famous YouTubers to cover your game at release, and just normal players pick it up due to platform recommendations, or you recommend it to some friends, and the people who already bought the game from you recommend it to their friends, and so on. People recommending the game to others is so powerful, and when the new people come in to play your game, they find indeed a polished product and an enjoyable product, that will drive them to buy the game, and it will also drive them to recommend the game to other people as well, not because some famous YouTuber told them to buy the game, but because they have their own intrinsic understanding and experience to rely upon when they're recommending the game to others. So this is a huge win. This is something we can do in video games. that perhaps other industries cannot do, that sell, I don't know, maybe physical products or things in the real world. Software works in such a way that you can download it very easily, you can try it. If you like it, you can buy the full version and you can spend any amount of time in it. And when a friend of you asks for your recommendation, you're willing to recommend it. This happens with things like Photoshop and I don't know, internet browsers and so on. So it's something that happens with software very much, and humans naturally weigh very heavily the recommendations of their friends. So this is something we in the games industry can capitalize on big time. So if you're wondering how to put all this into practice, here's the simple framework for playing this out. So first of all, in step 1 here, when you invite a player, only do a 10 to 20 minute playtest. Of course, this is not enough to show the player all of the game, but it is definitely enough to expose the player to enough of the game to make them think if they would want to experience the rest of the game or not. And these 10 to 20 minutes, they don't have to be the first 10 to 20 minutes from the game. It can be the 3rd or 5th or 10th level of the game. It can be the 5th or 10th boss fight of the game. Of course, you might have to spend a couple of minutes explaining the mechanics at this point of the game, but you will have to playtest this part anyway. So why not use this playtest as your great opportunity to get feedback? Now here at this first step, you will get bonus points if the player that you invited to playtest is from your target audience. So of course, we cannot guarantee that, but if you can find someone from your target audience, you will get much higher quality feedback because that person is someone who would actually buy the game in the real world. So having that person's opinion and feedback is hugely valuable. If you don't know what your target audience is, then this is your opportunity to discover it, because you might think it's, I don't know, 35-year-old males, but the actual results might surprise you. Perhaps people from a completely different group show interest in your game and would happily purchase it from you at this step. So if you don't know what your target audience is, this is an excellent opportunity to find out as you're recording the results and the feedback you get from the playtest. And moving to the second step, after the playtest, you offer to sell the game with a small discount, of course, to these players. So when they play the game, they know it's a development version. They know that the game is not complete yet. Obviously, it's not released anywhere at this point. So the value proposition here is that they will not only get to play the rest of the game that they enjoyed so much, but because they're helping you with the development, they also get to capitalize on the discount that you offer them for helping you develop this game. So how big the discount should be is completely up to you. If the game is quite early in its development, but they still enjoy it and they want to buy it, then maybe 50% or 60% discount is appropriate, maybe even more. If the game is close to complete, then 10 to 20% of a discount is more appropriate. If the game is essentially complete and all it needs is some bug fixes and some small issues taken care of, then maybe 5% of a discount is more appropriate, but that's completely up to you. The point is that at whatever point they choose to purchase the game, you will grant them all the future updates of the game for free. So if you sold them the game at 50% discount, when the game was quite early in its development cycle, that is kind of similar to an early release for a game or a super early release. So from that point on and all the way to release and perhaps beyond, you will continue to share the updates with them, and you'll be surprised how much additional feedback and how much goodwill you will get from these players to help you along your journey. So when you do this process and you do get 10 people in a row to buy the game, then you have much more certainty that when you release the game and people get to play it for the very first time, then they will not encounter all the typical errors and bugs and glitches that most people find during release, and it's the reason why they review bomb the game. Instead, they will have a smooth experience, and they will be able to jump in directly into the fun part of the game and give you all the positive reviews in the world. So that's it for covering this topic. That's my recommendation for the best way to avoid getting review bombed. If you know someone who is currently in the development of their own game and they're worried about this and they're thinking about all the negative comments on the internet and what to do about them and how to control the narrative and all that stuff, I'd say don't worry about it. Make sure that you prepare the game for the release as much as possible by doing playtests such as this and by checking with the sales method to see if people would actually pay money for your game. And I would say your game will never be at risk of receiving such crazy review bombs, and it will actually have lots of success. So go ahead and share this video if you think you know someone who would benefit from it. And until then,